Good day, everyone. This short video will discuss the various reservations that had been recommended, created, but then returned to public domain, or exist today in some form. The majority of these reservations, as outlined on this map, were identified between the years of 1872 and 1887. As we begin, let's look at the tribes located in Washington, northern Idaho, and Oregon. This map shows approximate locations of tribes. The names shown may not be exactly where they resided, but should be close to where they would have located their primary or permanent winter camp sites. Also remember, the tribes of this region were mostly semi-nomadic, so they would have traveled throughout the area each year. Beginning in the spring, they began annual treks to hunting, fishing, and gathering sites, traveling to the root grounds, mountains, and hunting areas, traveling to Montana, to Buffalo. The most important movement was to salmon fishing sites. At times, tribes crossed into another tribe's country. The inherent cultural way was to allow others to enter your land to trade and take part in the annual salmon fishery. Many root fields too were commonly shared. Sharing took place except when we went to Buffalo. Then we were trespassers in Blackfeet country. The sharing of resources was vital for life to continue from generation to generation. The United States established reservations such as these of the Spokane, Colville, Kalispell, and Coeur d'Alene in order to isolate and separate tribal people from the white populations. Many times under the guise and words of, "The only way we can protect you Indians is if you move to a reservation," or promises of a section of land, food, rations, a home, and along with equipment so the Indian could learn to farm. In the end, it was all about removal and assimilation. Make the Indian look, act, and talk like the white European immigrants that invaded, stole, and then took over their country. No longer would tribal people be free, able to be hunters, fishers, and gatherers. Now they would be forced to learn a new way of living. The first reservation that Spokane Tribe was given was created by an executive order, signed by President Ulysses S. Grant on April 9, 1872. This reservation was officially established for the Colville, Spokane, Kalispell, Coeur d'Alene, Methow, Okanagan, Sandpoil, Lakes, and other scattering bands. This reservation was called the Colville Reservation, but is not the Colville Reservation that is known today. This reservation was situated to the west of the Columbia River, with the 49th parallel, or Canadian border, being the northern boundary, the Pend Oreille and Little Spokane rivers being the eastern boundary, and the Spokane River being the southern boundary. This reservation held many of the tribe's great historic fishing sites: the Kettle Falls of the Colville tribe, Little Falls of the Lower Spokane, the confluence of the Middle Spokane, and the river and lakes where Kalispell and Pend Oreille lived. Along with Indian agents, the United States had other agents here. They were titled Farmers in Charge. The farmer in charge of this area was Park Winan. Winan was to assist tribal people in transitioning from hunting, fishing, and gathering to farming. He was to disperse rations and farm equipment. By this time, many tribal people had already become capable farmers, with tribal farms scattered in the valleys of the Colville, Little Falls, Chouila, Pend Oreille, and Spokane valleys. Unfortunately, the tribes soon came to realize how unethical and dishonest an Indian agent could be. Winan never informed the Indians that a reservation had ever been established for them. Instead, he quickly went to work, along with other whites in the Colville Valley, to have the reservation moved to the opposite side of the Columbia River. The first reservation was established on April 6, 1872, but was returned to public domain approximately 3 months later on July 2nd of 1872. President Grant, on the same July day, passed another executive order creating today's Colville Reservation. The reservation used the Columbia River as its eastern and southern boundaries, Okanagan River as its western boundary, and the Canadian border as its northern boundary. In July of 1873, the United States sent a commission out to investigate the complaints in the Idaho Territory and territories adjacent thereof. John Shanks, T.W. Bennett, and Henry Reed were investigating matters connected to the Nez Perce when General Malloy, Superintendent of Indian Affairs for the Washington Territory, traveled to Lewiston, Idaho, to secure the Commission's presence at the Colville Agency. The Commission sent John Shanks to investigate the matters involving the northern tribes. By the end of Shanks' investigation, He cited many unscrupulous deeds done to the Indians by their ex-Indian agent, Winan. Shanks' report was included in the Commission's official report filed with the Secretary of Indian Affairs. In this report, they proposed new reservation boundaries, beginning at the point in the channel of the Columbia River, opposite the mouth of the Okanagan River, thence up the center of the channel of the Columbia River to a point opposite the mouth of the Spokane River, thence up the center of the channel of the Spokane River to the mouth of Hangman or Latah Creek, thence up the center of Hangman or Latah Creek to the line dividing Washington and Idaho territories, thence south on said line to the top of a ridge between Hangman or Latah Creek and Pine Creek, thence easterly along the summit of said ridge to a point which is 5 miles in a direct line east of the said territorial line, thence in a direct line north to the dividing line between the United States and British Columbia, thence west along the said line to the Okanagan River, thence down the center of the channel to Okanagan River to the place of beginning. One of Shanks' 21 remarks included, "They ask for no money or clothing. All they wish is that their homes be secured to them." Shanks' report stated that this reservation shall be a permanent reservation, a home for the following tribes, and such part of these tribes as may be proper, namely, Coeur d'Alene, Upper and Lower Spokanes, Kalispels, Pend Oreilles, Kootenays, Lakes, Colvilles, Sandpoil, Methow, and Okanagans, 10 in all, but this reservation was never officially established. A short time later, on the 20th day of July, 1873, the Coeur d'Alene tribe, along with Indian agent J.B. Monteith, would negotiate with Shanks and Bennett of the same commission at a site along Hangman Creek. These negotiations concluded with the establishment of the Coeur d'Alene Reservation that is known today. By 1891, the white populations had grown, and pressure to open more Indian land was taking place. President Benjamin Harrison signed an executive order returning the north half of the Colville Reservation back to public domain. Although Spokanes were not officially included in either the Colville Reservation, created in 1872, or the Coeur d'Alene Reservation, created in 1873, some Spokanes moved to these reservations, as they had close family ties already living there. These Spokanes later became enrolled Coeur d'Alenes and Colvilles. Throughout the next decade, the remaining upper, middle, and lower Spokanes, along with those left in the Chuila Valley, continued to meet with representatives of the United States. Most of these councils were held at the grounds above Spokane Falls, where discussions of a Spokane reservation was proposed. This reservation was laid out in the lower Spokane's territory. The proposed reservation utilized the far bank of the Spokane River as its southern boundary, Shimakin Creek as its eastern boundary, and the Columbia River up to Nimchin Creek or Hunters Creek as its western boundary. Then up Nimchin Creek over to the mountains to the headwaters of Shimakin Creek as the northern boundaries. In 1880, Lower Spokane Chief Whistlepossum, later to be known as Chief Lot, wrote a letter accepting the boundaries. Unfortunately, as President Rutherford B. Hayes was approving the Spokane Reservation by executive order, he reduced the size of the reservation substantially, as he used the 48th parallel and not Nimchin and Shimakin Creeks as the northern boundary. This Spokane Reservation is what is known today. Many of the upper and middle Spokanes refused to move to Spokane, Coeur d'Alene, or Colville reservations and continued to live where their ancestors were born and buried. Thus, for Spokane chiefs such as Enoch, Skilhalt, Gary, Louis Welshoy, Antochan, and Paul all remained around the confluence of the Little Spokane River and in or near the city of Spokane Falls. They witnessed the white populations expanding all around them, especially following the completion of the Northern Pacific Railroad in 1881. By 1884, there were 10,000 new immigrants that had arrived in the city of Spokane. In 1887, the United States sent a group of commissioners to council with the upper and middle Spokanes. John Wright, Jared Daniels, and Henry Andrews met with the chiefs, headmen, and other Indians beginning on Monday, March 7, 1887. The commissioners were sent here to attempt and move the remaining Spokanes to a reservation. Initially, Wright introduced the message that the people would need to decide where they were to move. The reservations that were presented were Colville, the Coeur d'Alene, or the Jocko. Today, the Jocko Reservation is known as the Flathead Reservation. Initially, the Spokane Reservation was not proposed as an alternative. It was really not a negotiation, though, as much as it was a take-it-or-leave-it proposition, a last chance. For 10 days, the talks went forth. Towards the end of the meeting, tribal people presented what they wanted proposed to Washington, Commissioner's great father, the President. They asked for a separate reservation that would go from the Little Spokane River down and adjoin Lott's Reservation. A telegraph was supposedly sent and the request denied. The 1887 agreement was signed by the commissioners and some of the people in attendance, thus mostly migrating to the reservations where they had some relations, or living where they felt they might feel welcome. Some left the cities. Others took up land in the surrounding areas. Others, like Chief Gary, lived out their years in the land of their ancestors. Gary continued to live what is now known as Indian Canyon or along Heineman Creek.